On Christmas Eve 1975, Ingrid Ostrenga, 27, was found lifeless in her Kailua home with an electrical cord around her neck. She was supposed to be at her parents' home for the holidays, but when she didn't arrive, they begged a friend of hers to break into her home and check on her. Investigators determined that nothing was taken from her home, and Ingrid was found fully clothed, leaving investigators uncertain of the motive. Just 2 weeks before her murder, she had been followed home by 2 men, and she had run to her neighbors for safety. She had been assaulted earlier that year in July, leaving her family and investigators questioning if it's all connected to her murder. There is very little information on her case, and I was only able to find details in the archives. One Honolulu newspaper reported in 1975 that Ingrid, who preferred to go by the nickname Lori, was an adept horsewoman who participated in steeplechases and won a number of awards at horse shows. Lori was said to have come to Hawaii on vacation and decided to stay. She found work as an exotic dancer at a Waikiki nightclub, and she was also reportedly a bar hostess as well. She rented a 3-bedroom home on the 1349 Ulupani Street, and she lived alone, but in the weeks leading up to her murder, had been asking friends to stay with her. Lori was last seen leaving work around 2 a.m. on the 24th of December 1975. A friend had dropped off packages at her front door earlier that day because Lori had not answered. The plan was for Lori to take these packages to her parents' home when she visited for the Christmas holidays, but Lori hadn't arrived at her parents' home like planned. Lori's family worried about her and reached out to a male friend of hers and asked him to go over and check on her. He told Lori's family that he had left packages for her at the front door earlier because she hadn't answered, and they asked him that if she didn't answer this time, could he break in and just make sure she was okay. Lori's friend arrived at her home around 6 p.m., and again, Lori didn't answer the door, so he did as directed by her parents and broke into the home and found Lori lifeless with an electrical cord around her neck. One article reports that she was found on her couch, another reports she was found in the kitchen. What is clearly reported in all articles is investigators found no sign of a struggle, nothing was missing or out of place in her home, and Lori was fully clothed. It seems like investigators were aware of who Lori was for a few reasons. In July, she had reported being assaulted to local authorities, and local authorities were seen escorting her home a few times since that report. When investigators spoke to her neighbors, who asked not to be identified in the media, they told investigators that they thought that they had heard Lori earlier in the morning, most likely talking on the phone. They said that Lori had a dog who would normally bark at strangers, but they didn't hear the dog bark that morning, and they didn't hear any struggles or screams. Lori's neighbors knew her well, especially since just a few weeks ago they had heard what they described as blood-curdling screams coming from her home and Lori yelling for help. Lori had run from her home being chased by 2 men and ran to the neighbor's home and began pounding on the door begging for help. The neighbor let her in and the 2 men fled in a car. She told them that she had been followed home by 2 men who she believed followed her from her job. She told the neighbors that she knew one of the men. Her family and friends told investigators that she had been extremely nervous and scared since the incident and had been trying to get friends to come over and stay with her at her home. In 1975, investigators did release to the press that they had narrowed their investigation down to at least 1 suspect in the case, but would not comment other than to say that, quote, no suspect is in custody yet, end quote. An autopsy would reveal that Lori had died of asphyxiation and had likely been deceased more than 12 hours before she was found. It's now 51 years later and her case remains unsolved, and there's very little information available in her case. Please keep sharing her face in her case in hopes that it will generate new leads. Thank you so much for taking the time to get to know Lori today, and don't forget, when you see those missing and murder posts on social media, share, because every time we share a face, we do get closer to solving a case, and I will see you all back here tomorrow for another day in Hawaii.